Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is George here from Lucia's podcast. On today's episode, we have Aron Vuijsje, Director of Sales from Monday.com. Aron, welcome to the podcast. How's it going today?
Thank you so much. It's going great. Really happy to be part of the podcast and excited for our conversation today.
My pleasure. I got to congratulate you and Monday.com on your continuous growth. Going public last year, tremendously hiring, growing, increasing headcount. You've been with the company for 6 years and seen this develop from the ground up. For our listeners here, I'd love to hear about your experience there and how that path has been for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, it has been an amazing journey and a very quick-paced moving journey. So when I started in the company, we had only about 16 employees that were working here. At the time, it was still called The Pulse. In between, we rebranded to Monday.com. We were a private company, now we're a public company. We were only located in Israel, now we're located all over the world. So definitely a lot of changes. And probably one of the biggest changes that kind of speaks towards my story in Monday.com is we didn't have a sales team. And then in conversation with now our co-CEOs at the time, the CEO and the CTO, I brought up from hey, we should have a sales team. So that is in a very short, nutshell, some of the big changes that happened during my period here. I officially came into the company as a junior customer success agent. I did have experience already in sales previously, but I was looking for something new. I wanted to try out something new and really ended up at the time in the Pulse, now Monday.com, in the company in a customer success position. Immediately fell in love with the company, felt good about the product, felt good about the culture. So already kind of saw from early on in the organization, this is somewhere where I can see myself stay for a long time. And that's also how I approached it, right? When I was still in customer success, it was kind of 8-hour shifts. Nobody asked me or told me that I had to stay longer, but I decided myself I'm going to stay longer. And ended up pretty much building the enablement on the customer success side in the very, very early days.
Wow.
Yeah, I really came in motivated. I came in with, I'm looking for a career, another job. And when I say career, I was looking for something long-term where I could stay and grow, and not a place to stay for another year, do something quickly, but really put that in. And to be able to get there, I was more than willing to also put in the effort. So I definitely put in that time. Having that said, you still obviously need to have a supportive and good leadership to be able to actually make those changes. So while we're going through that process, I started off with working on the onboarding materials for new people on the customer success side, but also really quickly started realizing that I was really missing sales. And even in my day-to-day job, right, I was focusing even on the customer success side, still on the sales side, because I was just missing that. So it very clearly and quickly became clear to me that this is something that I do love to do. I should get back into it, but I would love to do it in a way that is actually very much connected to what my, at the time, CEO and CTO, now co-CEOs, wanted, but we never really had a conversation around it. So what they had in their mind all the way before is really that Wolf of Wall Street idea, right? We're going to be very aggressive with our customers. The customers will guide how the product will look like. So the product is not going to be that good anymore. It's going to be unethical. We're just going to try to kind of push them to the highest prices, and we're not focusing on the best customer success service. That was kind of the idea that they had initially. Now the thing that I was, first of all, to be honest, quite surprised about, but also super impressed with, at some point with the head of customer success at the time, Edon, we said, let's go together and let's pitch it, right? let's have a conversation with him and say, what do we think? So the first thing that I really went into is, and I think that's super important in anything, if you want to create an initiative and push something forward and you speak to your leadership, speak their language. And when I say speak their language, what it really also means is understand what they care about, right? So in this scenario, I knew their biggest concern was, will we still be able to be so customer focused? Will we still be able to give that best experience? Will we still be able to control and make sure that we have the best possible product for all of our customers and not only for a very small percentage of our clients? And that's really where I came to the table and introduced consultative selling, right? The value-based approach instead of the transactional-based approach. And that's really the point where I would say, we have an amazing leadership. The truth is, in a lot of companies, I wouldn't get that chance. The moment that I came to them and asked it, I didn't have a huge big shot type of resume. It wasn't like, I kind of forced them into it. I was working in the company just for a few months. The truth is they had all the reasons to be like, Aron, you're a nice guy, but no. That's not what they did. What they did is listen, try it out, do 50% time of your time on the customer success side, do 50% of your time on the sales side. Let's do that for 3 months and let's see how it goes. That went well. Today we have a huge sales team, so that proof of concept worked really well. And from that point, immediately on, they pretty much allowed me to start hiring. Now to go from not believing and wanting a sales team to in one conversation giving me the chance to prove it, to after 3 months actually becoming my manager. So the co-CEO, the CTO at the time, Aron Vuijsje, was also my first manager when we opened up the sales team. And from that moment on, he supported it. He really, really helped me to grow out the team. The truth is I wouldn't have been able to do it without his support. And that's something that that's still something that I love about this company, the ability and the willingness from all the way throughout the organization to be proven wrong in the interest of our customers, in the interest of the company. And that's something that unfortunately often is different, right? Like often if somebody on the top of the organization doesn't want it, it's not a topic of conversation. The answer is just no. And I think we're very lucky that that's not the case with us, that we can bring up absolutely anything. They will listen, and they pretty much always give you the opportunity to prove it. If you prove it, like it will pay off for itself. And that's really, where we are today with sales teams all over the globe, having a huge sales team and being in a very different position.
Wow, thanks you so much. And I think you shared so much with us here. And in terms of like, just to recap, you started out as a junior CS role, had some sales experience from the past. You loved and felt really good about the product and the culture of Monday.com. And I think like even for people that don't work at Monday.com, we hear like these rumors about what it's like working for Monday, right? Like one of the rumors is like, hey, there's no commission here. Everyone has a nice salary that, they don't get too stressed about when they're missing their OTE. And, that's a big factor for a lot of people. For other people too, it's the fact that you have a tool to sell into multiple different departments that can, you don't have to look too hard for relevant people to be using it. It can be used by legal, finance, sales, marketing, and then tie it all together. And I'm using it now too. So I'm a believer of the product as well. What did you see earlier on, right? That kind of like led you to say like, this is it. This is the company I'm going to stay with. And like, I'm going to work with Monday.com.
Yeah.
And 6 years ago was different. Like it was in like
Very
today's
different.
market where,
Yeah.
Like recruiters are going crazy. You're getting a ton of offers. It was maybe an employer's market, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I would say, first of all, like obviously the time that I started, it wasn't a big company. There wasn't like big funds behind it. So at that point, you're absolutely right? We had to hire based on potential, not based on experience. It was a very different time. If you ask me what brought me to the company, like in the early days when I actually went there, which is in 2016, when I started there, what brought me by far really the biggest thing was the culture. I could see the care of the product itself. Also, Idan Hirsch, the manager that I had then, everybody that came into the team got the Zippo book about like how to give amazing customer success. His focus on the clients was to another level. And that was something that really, really spoke to me. The other side is obviously the product. The product wasn't close to what it is today, but I did really believe in the product already and that approach. And then the final thing, we always had a strong marketing funnel. So like marketing, product, CS, I would say were like the three big like base products that the company was built on. And that also, to be honest, made it a really good momentum for us when we started the sales team to actually start growing really quickly. Now, the thing that I would say, because in the end, right, I want to be completely realistic with everyone. It sounds beautiful, right? Oh, this is amazing. Like you just kind of grow throughout the whole organization. You don't have the commission, so it's kind of chill till. We're still a sales organization as well. People do have targets, and those targets are aggressive. We have extremely strong salespeople in the organization, so people make their targets, and we're in a good place. But it's not from, oh yeah, come in, join it. No, these are people that really need to be strategic. These are people that need to work hard to get it, just like every other organization. I think the main difference really when we were going into and building it from the beginning is that very heavy focus on the customer, where the concern, and you see that in a lot of organizations as well, It's not always the case. It depends if it's individual commissions, is it group commission, like how did you actually set it up? For every organization, that will be different. And also in Monday, we never said this is the way that it should be. And also throughout the time, we switched it a few times because the company changed, the way that we work changed. And you always, especially with these type of models, need to look back at it at minimum once a year, if not more often, from is this still the right model for the organization? So things
quick
change.
question about that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but when you're hiring new reps, because your guys are hiring, bringing on new folks, and they're coming from your traditional variable OTE type of package, how do they feel about making that transition to I hate to talk about comp, but I think, I'd be curious to learn, like, what do they think about moving to a comp like Monday.com has to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, today it's a little bit different. So I'll start off from talking where we like originally were. And it was
Okay.
at minimum to say very surprised, right? So this was not something that was happening in the industry. Also, you see that change more because in the beginning, we were hiring a lot more for potential. The bigger that you become as an organization, never stop hiring for potential. Like the potential that you hire will be the leaders from tomorrow. But we did add also the luxury to hire people with more experience. So you started getting more of a mix, and that's also where things start coming up more because for them, it's weirder, right? Because like you said, that they're coming from that like OTE model that they're used to with some of the other organizations, and that's different inside of Monday. By the way, OT is standing for on target earnings for anybody that's wondering. And what that really means is usually salespeople, they have a base and then they have a commission aspect to the overall amount that they get over a year. For every organization, it will be a little bit different. I would say most traditional is probably a 50-50, 50% base, 50% of that is a bonus that together fills up your full salary. In case anybody is listening, that's not super.
That was a good explanation too.
But in the beginning, so it really started off coming from like, we want to emphasize the group to do what's right? And sometimes if you're putting in the wrong commission models, what happens is people are going to work towards their commission. So usually that's based on how much revenue do you bring in. And then you're easily getting into situations where it's like, yes, I could give a little bit better service over here, but I don't have time for it because I need to rush to this other account. I'm just going to go quick into it. And that's the absolute opposite of what we care about at Monday. Obviously, it's important to bring in the revenue, but for a company, for the health, for the long term, it's way more important that you actually maintain all of the customers that you work with, that they really get the value, that we set them up for success, because that's across the organization what's going to allow it to succeed. So that's where we really started. We started from that process from we really want to make sure that we're doing what's right. And then later on, we actually find out very quickly that this had tons of benefits. One of the benefits was that the culture aspect was completely different from most of the organizations that people came from. So for example, new people that joined us, having their colleagues that are saying, oh, I hop on the call with you, let me share a template, oh, no problem, being actually happy for each other when you close a deal, taking a lead and saying like, hey, John, I actually think it's better for you to handle this lead because it's Spanish, I don't speak Spanish. Those type of things often don't happen in other organizations because it immediately has an impact on that model that you have, which is your commission model. And that's what you see over here. So you get something really strong back in return. One, again, you still need to be a performer. That's sales like in any other organization, right? You need to perform, and if you don't perform, obviously we need to look at how we can move forward, if we can move forward. But what you do know is you have a consistent salary, or at least the majority of your salary is consistent, which often also is rough for sales people, especially when you have something very aggressive like 20% base, 80% commission. A bad month can mean like I'm kind of struggling to find the food or pay for my family or all of these other things, which can be really heavy on that as well from the sales side. Now, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, one of the things that I love so much about the organization is anything can be discussed and anything can be changed. And that's really what we start seeing over time. There was a difference. We went during that process, we started working with a bonus model, which wasn't necessarily commission, but it was that one time in the year where you had the ability to get a bonus based on how you were performing. Then, of course, as a company, we went from from a private company to a public company, which also again makes changes. So to keep a very long story short, today we are on a model that is an OTE model, but it's still an OTE model that is based on what we believe is important. So it's not just about the revenue that you're bringing in. 50% of that is on the performance that you do on your overall numbers. 25% of that is based on how the actual team does, so that we still really make sure that you keep that team atmosphere, that we're helping each other, that we're bringing people up. And then other 25% is about the culture and qualitative aspects. So like, for example, I might have one rep that hits 120%, and I have another rep that hits 100%, but he helped 3 of our newer guys to ramp up and immediately get to 100% as well, where before they were tracking towards 70%. Both of them are amazing, right? Both of them were hitting their targets. Both of them did a good job, one a bit higher than the other. However, because we're building that model there, in this case, actually the person that made the most impact is the one that helped the other ones as well by bringing the rest of the team up to the full performance. The other thing that works very close to the culture that we have, which is really like, we want to all help each other because together we're much stronger than an individual. So this allows us to kind of do both things. One of the things that we wanted to do, which is very important, especially while we're more scaling, is making sure that you can properly reward your top players. It is something that you always need to think about, and it's something that's really important. But at the same time, you need to think about, how do I do that without harming the culture while still making sure that we all collaborate and work very well together? My expectation is over the next few years, we'll probably make changes again. And I think that's how every organization should look at it. There is not one commission or non-commission, however you want to call it, model that works for every organization. It depends on the states of the organization that you are. It depends on the culture that you have. There's so many impact points that like will decide what is the best model for you. And the best advice that I can give to organizations is have a standard cadence where you just come together with a group of people within the organization to ask yourself, is this still the best possible model that we can have based on what's happening in today's world, based on the changes that we have as an organization? If the answer is yes, great, continue the way that you're going. If the answer is no, open that up, because you always want to make sure that you're consistently improving processes, and these can always change.
I think, thank you for sharing that. I think I've definitely can relate to a few things that you said. I think working for an Israeli company, I can definitely notice that the culture, especially here for Lucia too, it's like, we're not looking for the lone wolf, right? We're looking for team players that can help not only impact and bring in their own revenue, right? If we're talking about sales, but also help positively impact other people around them, share new ideas, teach us something new that we're not doing today. And I think you brought up another good point, right? Like taking us up to the right decision makers and stakeholders to keep rediscussing and talking about appropriate comp plans. For the folks that want to do that, like what are some things that you should go with and ready with to have that conversation with the C-level execs? Because you have to speak their language, right? They don't want to. You have to speak their language. You probably want to have some specific kind of data. And what is that kind of stuff that you usually have ready for those conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, you know, it is just the truth. In the end, it also depends on the type of leadership that you have. I hope for all of you that you have a good leadership that is open and willing to listen. If that's not the case, then in the end, you need to make a decision if you want to be in an environment like that or not.
If that's not the case, I think we're both hiring.
Exactly. Come over to us. Like, these are two great companies to work for. It is important to say that, because you can, you know, come prepared, do the best possible things. But in the end, if you have somebody that's not open or willing to listen, then, you know, that's kind of where it ends. Let's hope that for you guys it's different, and if not, like George just said, feel free to look at our page. We're both hiring aggressively, so you're more than welcome to have a look there. The main thing really is, one, understand where you are, right? Like it would be weird for me to individually just directly go there. So like the first thing is I had the conversation with my manager first. That's important for two aspects. One, you don't want to give the feeling to your manager that you're overstepping him. And two, it's significantly going to help your case to go together with your manager and align with him first. What this also allows you to do, there's a very high likelihood that your manager has a better understanding on what are the concerns from the director, the VP, or in this case, the CEO and the CTO, now the co-CEOs. So that also helps you to, first of all, get a better understanding why not. If I would come to that meeting without having any understanding on why didn't we do it so far, then of course it makes it much harder for me to actually come in with the right way. So actually doing that together with my manager, allowed us to immediately be on the same line. He was also extremely supportive, so I'm also still to today very thankful for that. And that allowed us to come as a united front. Once we were there, I already knew, like we spoke about before, what kind of their concerns was, that like idea of like the wolf of Wall Street, negative, not ethical, not doing what's best for our customers. So it was really easy for me to immediately say, that's not what I like. To be honest, that's even the reason why I was trying something else, because I came from that environment of aggressive, not collaborating sales teams, where nobody's willing to share anything, where people weren't willing to help with each other, where people were fighting around their leads. And I personally also really didn't like that atmosphere. And I was also thinking about, like, maybe that means that sales is not the right job for me to be in. Now, like we said before, I very quickly understood that that's not the case, because I missed it tremendously while I was going through the cycle. And I really quickly wanted to go back to it, because sales is an amazing way of actually helping people and creating value if you do it the right way. Um, and that's really that point that we came into. Like, the conversation directly went around, hey, sales can be consultative. Sales can be a way where you're actually helping customers. But in the end, and I think this is for pretty much every organization, when you want to get a company on board and not teams on board, you need somebody that helps them, holds their hands throughout the overall process. And the bigger those companies become, the more bureaucracy it will take. And we both know that when you're going to an enterprise organization, which means something different in every company. So let's just say, like, if you're going to a company of 50,000 people, there's going to be a lot of hoops that you need to go through for legal and for security and for stakeholders and people involved. If you don't have somebody that can actually help you to run through that process properly, making sure that you get the right services, understand what the concerns are, you're not going to be able to get a whole company on board, especially when you're talking about a product like Monday.com, which it's not like, for example, Slack. It's the same for everyone, right? So for us, every department will use it a little bit different. So it's not that I can just say, okay, great, Monday, it's boom, the whole company uses it right now. The benefit that we have is it's a very flexible platform and we can truly help everyone. But when I'm working with the sales team, I'm going to help them to build out a CRM, for example. When I work with the marketing team, we're going to work on doing their event planning and their marketing campaigns. When I'm working with the IT team, I'm going to make sure that we can get IT tickets coming in, making sure that we handle everything, managing our technology stack, getting the notifications. And I can continue like this across every department and every role. But in the end, I need to tailor it to the right people that are there. And to be able to do that, obviously, you need to have good and strong conversations with your customers. And there needs to be somebody there that can connect all of the dots and make it easy for the company to be successful. And that's really what I proved in those 3 months. We, at the time, closed our biggest client there, and also an extremely satisfied customer, by helping them to grow throughout the organization effectively and being able to connect those dots that allows us to grow together.
Wow, that's interesting. And I'm happy you shared that, right? Like, it sounds like you have a pretty positive sales environment, sales atmosphere across your department. You're also managing 5 teams, right? Or is it more than that? It's growing, probably.
There's probably a 6 coming soon, but for now it's 5 teams. And when I say 5 teams, I do have to say I have some amazing managers that are helping with managing the teams themselves. I would not be able to do it without them. So huge shout out to all of them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. What's the general approach to managing managers? What is that like?
Great question. So, like, it changed over time. I think one of the things that makes it a lot easier for me is that, like, every time that I moved into a role, I was in the role before that I actually managed, right? So I started off, being the first salesperson in the organization. Then when I started hiring, I was the first salesperson. So I went through those issues. Then I became a manager. I managed multiple teams before I became a director. The moment that I became a director and started managing team leads, I already managed multiple teams. So I would say that was a big benefit for me because A, I've always been in their position before, and B, I even was in their position in the same company. So that obviously helps to give a lot of context. A lot of the issues and things that they will walk into, I already walked into before. So that makes things obviously easier. In the end, the way that I look at it is actually the same. When I was an individual contributor, my customer was the client. When I became a manager, my customer was my team. Now that I'm a director, my customer is my managers. And if they are not successful, I'm not successful. And that counts across the whole board, right? If I don't make my customer successful, I'm not going to be successful as an individual contributor. If as a manager, my team is not successful, I'm not successful. As a director, if my managers are not successful, I'm not successful. So that really stays the same across the whole board. So in any one of these roles, the main important part was making sure that I do what I can do to enable my team to be most successful. Because if I don't do that, the cleaner just turned on the light. Welcome, everyone. So if they're not successful, I'm not successful. If I'm not successful, they're not successful. So that was the first thing. So I think one of the big things that allows you to do is you are willing to grind, right? If as a manager, if my team had a big deal and you need to hop on the call at 2 a.m., I will hop on that call at 2 a.m. If somebody needs an executive sponsorship, even today, and it doesn't matter who that is, can be anybody in the team or even outside of the team, I'm very regular, jump onto calls with other sales teams as well within the organization. Because in the end, like I said, it's all about the organization. It's not about my team. It's not about their team. Like if we together are successful, and that of course also connects to the options and the RSUs and all of those things, we're all going to be successful. So that's my main goal. So I still also hop on the call with reps of other managers that I don't even manage, because it's that team spirit, right? Making sure that together we work. But I would say that's a really big thing. Like lead by example. Don't become comfortable and be like, oh, I did all of this already. You know, I went through it. It's now your turn. No, even more important, this is the time to grind. If you don't give the example, you're not going to end up with a team that does the same. If you expect your team to be in the office at 9 a.m., you should be in the office at 8 a.m. If you expect your team to leave at 6 p.m., you should leave at 7 p.m. If you expect them to feel comfortable to pick up the call all the time, pick up that call with them, right? Show them I'm there. And one example of that could be, for example, when I was a manager and I just opened up the team on the US side. It was like all the way in the beginning when I moved to New York. We were opening up the office there and I was building the first sales team. What we do is we have a lot of call reviews. What is a call review? One person puts in their call, everybody listens to it, and we give feedback. That's a pretty scary process, especially if you're new into an organization. So the first call, whose call was it? I think you can guess it.
Yours.
It was my call. And I even told everybody in the team, I want you guys to be harsh. I want you guys, because in the end, that's the best way that we can learn. And what is my focus there is, if the people that you work with are comfortable and willing to show their weaknesses, you as a manager will be way more successful to actually help them. If everybody in your team is going to send you the best calls, you're not going to find out where you can actually support and give them that added value that's really going to change something around. So that's really an environment that you want to create. This is one example of how you can do that, is by actually thanking it, right? If somebody's willing to bring a call to the table, like clearly thank them for that. When people are opening up and sharing, wow, how did I lose this deal? That's something really good, because it allows everybody else in the organization to learn from it and to get better. You don't want to come into a place where people don't share those learning lessons, because that's what allows us all to grow. So there's so many things that we could talk about this for hours, but that's definitely one of the very big things. You know, create an environment where people are comfortable to be open, honest, and transparent. And if they don't know what to do, you want them to tell you, I'm lost, I need some help. You don't want them to hide it, because again, if they hide it, you can't help them. They're not going to be successful, which means you're not going to be successful, which means the company is not going to be successful. So that kind of all connects to each other.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's a lot of key takeaways from here. I think number one, find a company with a good culture that you can join, where
Absolutely.
you can be provided with the support that you need to grow as a person with the company as well, and how both benefit. It's a win-win for both. Another thing too is working in a good sales atmosphere, like in encouraging people and creating an environment for people to feel out open, honest, transparent. They can share their weaknesses and not feel like they're kind of like bubbling themselves in a corner, but they also feel like this is something that if I share these weaknesses, other people will help me improve them, turn them into my strength. Working with a supportive leadership team, and being supportive to other folks around you. And also another big thing too for like growing companies is like expecting change and not being stuck in your own ways. Always be willing to kind of tweak things, change things as you go for the better of the environment overall.
That's actually
miss something here? I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
I just wanted to say that that's maybe one important thing to still jump into, because that's actually really important. There's a natural resistance to change. And that's really important as a company. You need to really be aware of that and focused on that when you make those changes to create the culture that we have today, which is you still always want to make sure that you do it right, of course. But today, especially the people that have been in the company for, I wouldn't even say very long, right? If you've been in the company for 6 months, you already saw a lot of changes. Right. People do get used to it, but you really need to make sure that when you make changes, that explain why you make a change. Don't just make a change and say, this is what you need to do. Explain why you make the change. Get somebody that can speak towards it with like a real commitment. So for example, in our case, when we changed some of the targets of our team, it was easier because it didn't directly connect to like commission models. So it didn't mean, oh, now I'm going to get a lower salary. But two, what was really important, our leadership actually came to the call, explained to people, we understand that this could have an impact. That's okay. We're not looking at that over the next 3 months. We really believe that in the end, this is going to be a good move for everyone and allow us to perform a lot better. And thankfully, that was also the case. We ended up actually significantly increases in deal sizes, and everybody benefited from the change that we made. But it is really important to be patient enough and also willing enough to come to those calls, explain why you make those changes. You can't always be in a situation where everybody agrees, right? That will never happen, and change is always scary, so there will always be some concerns around it. But when you force changes without explaining, there's nothing that feels worse. When you make a change and you're actually explaining it, and you're also taking in consideration what can that mean for the team, and let them know we are already considering that, that has a huge difference. And this is like in a bigger scale because we change something for the whole organization, but you can also look at it at a very small scale, right? When I ask one of my reps to take the risk and, for example, sell a completely new product that we have that we don't know how successful he's going to be, I also want to make sure that I at least put him in a position where he's not consistently stressed, and know that I know and will take into consideration that he's not working with the same as everybody else in the sales team, and that might benefit him, it might harm him. We only really know that after a few months that we tested it out. And you want to give them that confidence from, I know that, I'm aware of that, and I'll take that in consideration. And of course, you also need to do that because else it has a significant bad effect afterwards. I just wanted to quickly touch that because just changing things without making sure that you change it in the right way and communicate it well can also create more friction.
Absolutely. And then also, if those changes are affecting people's roles and the roles are changing and the responsibilities are, there's going to be that misconception of like, hey, well, I signed up for this role. I got hired 6 months ago for these responsibilities. How am I not in charge of renewals anymore, for example, right? So it could be detrimental to people, their morale, because they feel like their roles being impacted, but they weren't considered when these changes were made. So I agree. I think communication is huge. And also, like working at a startup as a person, you have to expect these changes and be receptive for it. But it all goes back to like working for a supportive leadership team, right? Like I think leadership teams that have the best, what do you call it? The best intentions, right? For their reps, for their teammates, they're hearing out their concerns as well. That also goes a long way too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And also for, if any CEOs, VPs, or any leadership is listening to this call, I can also truly say, like being in this company for 6 hours, there was never in my whole career anybody in the company that told me, Aron, you should stay extra hours, Aron, anything like that. Like the fact that you got that right treatment, the fact that you knew that people care about you made me want to do that. There never in my whole career there's been anyone that told me you have to do this. So actually making sure that you care about your team and doing those things will pay you back. I can guarantee it. We really see it also over here in the organization. Like when you take good care of your people take good care of you. And that's just always the truth.
Absolutely. I see that too. And it's been, I mean, I've dealt with it too. Like I've been working for a long time through my professional career, and it's very, very true. Aron, to wrap this up, any kind of tips, advice you'd give to people looking to get into tech or sales in general?
Yeah.
You have a ton of experience. You've done this, you built it up from scratch. You're hiring people. What are some things that you can share with the folks out there?
Really good point. Well, I'll start all the way at the beginning.
Right.
So if you don't have experience in the specific role that you're looking for, make sure that you really do your research. The first company that I went to was like advertisement technology. I had zero experience in it, but because I didn't just interview for 300 different jobs and don't actually have the time for any of them to do good research, the 3 days before I had my interview, I learned everything that I could find online about any abbreviation that was related to edtech. So when I came into that interview, I actually had a lot of knowledge. And even when they hired me, they told me like, you're not really the right fit for it or have the right experience, but because like we believe in the potential that you have, we are going to hire you. So like the first thing is quality over quantity. Don't just go to 300 different job positions. Don't prepare for it because that's very likely going to end in not getting the job. It's much better to have a smaller pool of companies that you're actually interested in and doing that research so that you come knowledgeable to the organization and show that you actually care. Once you did that point is obviously continuously open up to learn. think very carefully before you go to that job interview and how your previous experiences can be relevant for the job that you apply for. So even though that I didn't actually have any experience in the ad technology, from even being a teacher in fight sports as like a leadership skill and a confidence skill and being able to presenting, to the nightlife where I brought all of my own people, whatever I could find that I could connect to why would I be good in this role and how do my qualities connect well, really helps you there. Prepare that for yourself. Don't just go into the meeting and it's like, I'm the right person for this, this, and this, but having that list and building it for yourself when they ask you the questions, right? Like, why do you think that you could be right for this fit? What do you feel strong about? You already have those answers ahead. So that's definitely a big thing. And then once you get into the company, this is something that I very strongly believe in. Put yourself in the position before you ask for it. And what does that mean? Like, step number one, make sure that you're the best in the role that you have today that you can possibly be, because that's the number one requirement in pretty much every organization to move to the next level. So don't, fall in love too much with the next one, put all of your time there. Requirement number one is be the best in the role that you do today. So good that you can even take some extra responsibility onto it, which allows you to get to that next level. So once you're there, once your performance are good and you know that you can handle that part really well, start taking on additional responsibility that that can make a big impact on the organization, because that's where it starts going. Be the person that everybody in your team wants to go to learn from, right? And be very willing to help them, because the moment that the company is going to either look externally or internally for another manager, they're going to look at those aspects, right? Is there somebody that people want to learn from? Is this somebody that's strong in the actual position that is doing today? And that's going to most likely put you there. And that's really what I saw in my whole career. When I started in the CS, right, I put myself in the role of selling before I actually became the first salesperson. When I became a manager, I was already supporting the other salespeople on that group. So I was already managing them unofficially. It just became official. When I moved to the US and we started hiring managers there, I onboarded all the other managers before I was a director, which gave the trust to put me in that director role and actually start managing teams myself. So that's like kind of goes to, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. If you want something really badly, work hard for it, right? That's a requirement, and that will always help you more. The truth is, in many cases, and I will even include myself in that as well, it's not the smartest people in the world that get the furthest, right? It's the people that are willing to work hard, and it's the people that are willing to separate themselves from it. So don't just expect everybody else to give you presents and this is the way that you go there. Like, you do need to work hard if you really want to get to that next level, and be really aware from what makes the most impact for the company. That
Absolutely.
will be very interesting to hear for your leadership.
Oh yeah, I think hard work beats talent when talent isn't working hard. So
100%.
all day, every day of the week. So this has been impactful and very helpful. I'm ready to run through a wall after what you just said right here. So super exciting, Aron. Thank you so much for your insights.
Absolute
It's always been a pleasure. And thanks again. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a great day, and it was always good connecting. Also, for anybody out there, if you have any questions or want to follow up, feel free to reach out to me. My email is aron@monday.com, aron@monday.com. Always happy to learn and brainstorm with other leaders. Actually, George and I do it quite a bit as well. So it's always good to learn from each other. Just like we say, it's not just the culture in one company, also between companies. It's great to collaborate and work together. We can all learn from it.
Absolutely. Thanks again,
Awesome.
Aron.
Have a great day.
You too.